it's Joyce Conroy, host of The Block Party, and this is just a beautiful and joyous season of Advent. And we are on Ernie's Corner. And Ernie Cefalu, I just want to tell you, those iconic angels are so beautiful and just so classy. And I know Jesus Christ Superstar comes to mind, and I know we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about stuff that I haven't thought about since I was working on this. There was an image that was sent to me by a friend on Facebook, a guy that we had become friends a couple of years ago, and he's one of these kind of guys that his name's Rab, and he absorbs all this information everywhere, and it's really kind of cool. And he sent me this image a couple of weeks ago, and I saw it, and it was like, oh my God, I haven't seen this image in over 50 years. And it was one of the, even though I kind of pride myself on having a pretty good memory about things, this totally slipped my mind. It was something that I had never talked about before. I've done a lot of interviews about Jesus Christ Superstar, articles, and of course, we had talked about it early on in Ernie's Corner. We had talked about it, but this is a piece of it that it was like there was a puzzle and there was always a piece missing, but it didn't seem like it was that important that I wouldn't have remembered it, because I remembered everything else. But that piece, I guess, slipped my mind. And when I saw it, it reminded me of, it took me back to when I had committed to doing this album package concept in a week. And we talked about that before, where I had committed to Bill Levy, the creative director at Decca Records, who was overseeing the shootout that we were having between Norman Levitt and the two art directors that had left Norman Levitt and started their own company. And they had been the creative guys on the Decca Records account. So, and so I had committed to doing this project in about 5 days, from the time we got it on Monday to the time we presented it on Friday. And Norman was really, really upset at me because it was a very important account for him. It was very prestigious. I mean, he had a lot of great accounts, but this one was really, it kept his fingers in music, which he loved. And, he had a very good friend high up at Decca that, because Bill Levy was just going to take the account and go with these other guys. But this executive came down and said, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to have a competitive shootout between these two entities. And the funny thing is that I don't think Norman expected it to happen so quick, because he didn't have anybody to do it. All the other people that worked at his agency, and there was probably 30 other people at the agency. Not everyone was designers. There were production people and mechanical people and stuff like that. But he didn't have anybody. He had some couple of art directors, had some illustrators, but he didn't have anybody that could plug into Decca Records the way these two guys had done. But it came down. He was kind of panicked. I went to the interview. I showed him the Dolls Alive stuff and the album that I had done for that with the Stones lips on it. But that was like the first album I ever did. And it wasn't really a commercially released album. It was a gift to the 500 salespeople that were at this meeting. So I was Norman was really mad at me, but what's he going to do? He's sort of painted himself into a corner. He hired me. I'm going to do this thing. I made a mistake in committing to doing it so quickly, but I wanted to, I was pumped. I was pumped when I heard about, this Jesus Christ. I went to Catholic school until junior high school, and I was raised a Catholic. I really believe in Jesus and the rest of that. But I also, this became like a different kind of slant to what I was taught. Jesus Christ Superstar, the messaging there was kind of contradicting what we had all been taught for decades and centuries. So I found it very intriguing. When I had those 4 days, I was kind of like the leper in the corner. Nobody came around me. I was doing a lot of searching and looking, and I had gone to a couple of cathedrals there to just kind of get some inspiration. And I was a magazine collector. I've always collected magazines, preferably old ones. And National Geographic was one that always caught my interest. And Modern Mechanics was another one. But it was really interesting because it was like traveling around the world without leaving your house, you know, because they had all these great pictures. And I had some magazines and I'm looking through them and I see this image and it's a solar halo in
Wow.
Bulgaria. Okay. By the time I saw this, I had already one angel that I was playing with. You see it over here. And I wanted to use an angel because everybody used Jesus, you know, pictures of Jesus stuff. I wanted to sort of make it not just about Jesus, but something even more interesting. You know, when you hear Jesus Christ Superstar, you expect to see a picture of Jesus. Well, I didn't want to do that. So I was playing, I had 3 or 4 different ideas that I presented at the end, but this one was unique and by itself. And so I had one angel I was playing around with. And I was going through National Geographic and I saw that picture. And it was like, and I'm already a symmetrical designer. We talked about that before too. Everything I had done pretty much was symmetrical because I find I've become very comfortable with that because it's very soothing. It's like Disney cartoons versus modern day cartoons. In the Disney cartoons, everything was rounded and they didn't have any kind of sharp points. Today, cartoons are like totally different. And I found real comfort in symmetry. It had a balance to it that really made things work in my mind. And when I saw this image, I immediately went to 2 angels. You see it there, right here. It seemed to work really nicely. So now, and again, I hadn't seen this picture since I was working on this project over 50 years ago. And Rab sent me this and said, hey, does this look familiar?
Oh, that's really something.
Isn't
Oh,
that weird? I
it
mean,
is amazing.
yeah, I mean, you talk about divine intervention. There was a reason
Uh-huh.
why. There was a reason why I went to New York. There was a reason why I did this other stuff before I went to Norman Levitt. There was a reason why I was involved with the company that had the ability to get this album because they weren't going to get it. It was going to go right to these other guys. So when I presented in from Monday to Friday, I presented 3 or 4 different ideas, a couple that I liked even better than this, but this was one of them. And you see it right here. Okay. The competitors, and we had talked about this before too, the competitors, the 2 creative directors that had left and started their own company, really thought that using Jesus Christ Superstar was a bad move because of all the controversy. So their idea was really what you see here, where they just called it Superstar. And
That's the one in the middle. I thought I was going to ask you that.
that's this one. Yeah, that's this one. That was their idea. And what they suggested was that Decca should, you know, talk to Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber about using Jesus Christ in this. So they're trying to, it's like trying to convince Picasso that he shouldn't paint that way. It's not going to happen. You know, these 2 guys were young and they were hungry and then nobody knew who they were, but they were committed to this. They wanted it to be a stage play. I don't know whether you knew that or not. Not many people did. They were pitching it for quite a while as a stage play, but they couldn't raise the money to do it, I guess because of the controversy or whatever. Yeah. So they signed a deal with Decca Records and made it a musical. Okay, then it became, after it was so successful, then I worked with, on doing when Robert Stigwood took over the actual theatrical production of it, he reached out to me because I had done the original packaging and the logo. And I worked with him for about 3 months doing all the libretto and all when the production started touring, they needed all that stuff. And so I worked with him for about 3 months on a freelance basis out of the agency that I did this for. He kind of convinced me that if I were to work with him, he wouldn't, it wouldn't get back to Norman and stuff like that. And by the time this actually went on the road, I had left Norman Levitt and went to Craig Braun, where I did the Rolling Stones film and a bunch of other stuff. But this picture just really, it was like a sucker punch. I looked at that and went, oh my God, because I had forgotten all about it. I mean, so many things happening in such a short period of time in the beginning, from from working for other people to in New York and really happy there, and then being sent back out to California. It was something I didn't want to do. I mean, when I hit New York and started feeling that energy, I was home. I mean, I had never been there before in my life, never really been out of California, but I felt right at home. The energy was so amazing. I mean, and it was like, it always reminded me of Matrix, the first movie, when Keanu Reeves is going, we need some weapons, and all these things were flashing by him and stopping and doing this and that. That was what the energy like was for me. I remember coming out of the subway when I first went there, and I was schlepping a portfolio that weighed about 1,000 pounds. And I came out of Grand Central Station, and it was like standing in the doorway, and there were all these people, right? And you're looking out onto this street where there's people just like blurs. And it was like this energy that you could either turn around and go back, or you could launch into it, and I just launched into it, and that energy just was amazing, and my ability to do stuff, and the confidence that I got from that moment. I'll never forget that moment. It was one of those things that you just never forget. And culminating now with Jesus Christ Superstar was such an amazing opportunity for me. I mean, it was like almost too good to be true. And when I made the presentation, Norman and I made the presentation, and he had mellowed out. By Friday, he was pretty cool because he was seeing what I was doing, and he liked all of it. It was different than, I mean, because he had corporate accounts. He had, Ralston Purina. He had New York Life Insurance. He had Waring blenders and mixers and stuff, Waring. And all these other accounts, ITT Levitt Palm Coast, which was a big development, commercial development in Florida. He was a very interesting guy. He was a retired Marine Corps sergeant major, which is as high as you can go in enlisted thing before you become an officer. And he ran his agency like it was in the Marine Corps. I mean, it was crazy, but I was left alone. I mean, after Jesus Christ Superstar, it was like being at Norman Levitt, Carloni and Associates, where I had done the Dolls Alive thing, and then I was the hero. I was hero, and then I became the hero here at Norman Levitt, and so much so that they had a big supply room, and they took all that out and put it in another area, and they gave me this supply room that had a door between the agency and where I was, and I could shut the door and I could have music in there. I mean, it was made. They did out there in the bullpen. They didn't have music and stuff, and there was like a production guy that was having a heart attack every time he walked up and down, making sure that everything was flowing through the agency. And I was kind of left alone and working directly with Bill Levy, who was now the creative director at Decca, and chose us. I mean, he really was leaning toward the other guys, and when he saw. And it's really funny, Joyce, because I never thought about this before. But when he saw what I had done, he knew immediately that I had the ability to give him whatever he needed. And not only this package, but other packages as well, because he took me under his wing. He became my mentor. And he knew that I was green. Okay. I mean, I had bluffed my way up the ladder a bit, but he knew exactly. And that's why a lot of the projects that he gave me were challenging, not just because, he could have done them. He could have given them to somebody else, but he knew that I needed to know how to do this. If I was confronted with this problem, I needed to know how to react to it and come up a winner with it. And he really, when I think about it now, I mean, it was such an amazing time, such an amazing opportunity for me to have someone like him. He was already a very accomplished creative director, photographer, had done, a lot of work in the music business. And, I became his protege. And he taught me in those months that I, was working with him at Norman Levitt. He taught me a lot. And then when I left there and went to Craig Braun, I mean, he was really not in favor of that. He wasn't in favor of me going to Craig Braun. And here's the Dolls Live thing. There's where it started, and then it went to this. This got me the job. Okay, this over here got me the job. Then this became the product of the job. And then that label that you see on the record there begot me this guy and that group. So it was something that I hadn't thought about. I mean, again, seeing that picture, put it all back together, put a whole different attitude, a whole different awareness. And, you know, and I've talked about this with you before about how anybody that says that they do this stuff on their own is really fooling themselves, because you need to be inspired. Everybody needs inspiration, whether it comes from another person, a group of people, something that you see in nature. In this case, I mean, if I had never seen that National Geographic, I don't think I would have ever put this together the way I put it. I mean, that's just crazy how that happened. And it was all meant to be.
Yes, God's plan, and here it, you know, Jesus Christ Superstar. That is, I have chills when I'm looking at that, Ernie, and just hearing your story.
It's like God. It sounds, I'm not a Bible thumper. Okay, I'm really not. But God came back into my life when I got diagnosed with cancer 23 years ago, and have been cancer free since then. He came back into my life, and not that I don't push it. You know, George Carlin used to say, religion is like having a pair of comfortable shoes, you know, but when you take those shoes off and try and put them on somebody else's feet, that's when things go wrong.
You're right.
My God, I keep internally as much as I feel that I need to. But when I saw this, I didn't think about it at the time, Joyce. And that's what I started to say. I didn't think about divine intervention, maybe. I mean, I just saw a thing. Morgan Freeman has a series called God, and all the different cultures and stuff. And he does all this starting in Egypt. And it was amazing that so many people, including my friend Tom Limke, had that reincarnation experience. He was on death's door. He talked to God, and it changed his life. He came back. I mean, it was amazing. And in a way, I never thought about it at the time when I saw this. All I thought was, wow, I'm a symmetrical guy. Maybe I should take this one angel that I have over here, okay, and I need to sort of combine it. And thanks to Ron Lacey, who is on our Facebook thread. He worked with me at Norman Levitt, and he was there after I had left, and he came to visit me at Craig Braun, and I hired Jim Doyle away from Norman Levitt to come to Craig Braun because we needed a production guy. And we're still friends to all this day. When Norman Levitt went out of business, a few years after I had left, Ron Lacey was still working there, and he helped Norman sort of break down the studio and do stuff. And he found these pieces that I had put together.
Oh, wow.
He took them. I didn't hear from him until about 5 years ago on Facebook. He said, "Hey, man, you remember me?" And it's like, yeah. And so we reconnected, him and I and Jim Doyle, because we all worked there. And he goes, I got something I want to send you. I said, really? He wouldn't tell me what it was. And he sent me these pieces that he had taken, that I had left. Because I just left Craig. I mean, I went from Norman to Craig. I didn't pack up everything and go. But, this, and so I sent him an angel psalm, and we've been friends ever since. He's a designer as well. And he was a pro football kicker. He played pro football. I mean, the guy is just really incredible. His name's Ron Lacey. He's on our thread. We'll get him on our show one time.
I'd love to have him.
Yeah.
God truly, sometimes God's plan doesn't get revealed until much later. And you know what? Even with the whole theme of Jesus Christ Superstar, the project, it was controversial. When it came out, I can remember hearing all of that controversy. But then as time went by, people started to see the true meaning of what was being conveyed.
Exactly. And it was just keeping an open mind and thinking there could be another way that it happened, But for me, when Rab sent me this picture, it was, I realized it was divine intervention. There was a whole reason why, starting from birth to when, I mean, it sounds crazy, but
no, it's not.
Things happen for a reason. And sometimes they happen much later than earlier. And to me, this was divine intervention. When I saw this again, it you know it really reminded me. I wrote a thing about how my determination was really built, and my confidence in myself was built on projects that brought me to my knees, and things that brought me to my knees in life. And this, God coming back into my life, brought me back. And not that I was a bad person. You move away from things. In the 60s, you were your own God, and God was you. And, I mean, it was just a whole different way of coming up and thinking about stuff. But like I said, for the last 23 years, God has been back in my life, and things are as good as they've always been. And I don't go to church every Sunday. I do sometimes light candles for people that I love and have passed away, but I keep my religion pretty much to myself. And to me, this just reminded me, seeing that again. And it was just a couple of weeks ago, Joyce. That's why I was so excited when we talked about doing this segment so close to Christmas.
Yeah.
And so controversial, but when I think about it, I've always sort of carried that disruptive thing across a lot of stuff that I do. I mean, I try to be different. I try and make each thing different. And speaking of different, this was the record label that went on the records, and it was a double record set. That was the label that I did, along with a bunch of other merchandising and stuff, DJ boxes that went out when you get the 45 singles in the DJ box, and I have all that stuff. I have it all. And that really inspired me to do what you're seeing here, which is what I called angel psalms. And angel psalms are your favorite psalm. And we could customize them, or we have I think this 13th psalm in here now. And most people really love that one. But we can also customize them to make it with your favorite psalm or a message to your loved one. But I put this leatherette behind it and made it look, I went from a line art look, which is what this is here, this on like a leatherette box set that we created. And I wanted to do something more exciting than this, because really the line art, like the Rolling Stones tongue, is just a piece of black and white line art. People look at that Rolling Stones tongue all the time and they go, hey, where's the red? Because it's just black and white. But that was how it needed to be to get 100% black and 100% red into a printed image. It had to be separated. You couldn't put it together. If the two colors were together, then nothing would be at 100%, because everything that's printed has to be broken into dots. And now those dots make up, full color. There's four layers of dots: yellow, red, blue, and black. And those four colors make up everything that you see in full color. So in order to get around that and get a pure red and a pure black, it was mechanically put together with a black line art and an overlay. But people don't really understand that a lot. But again, these angel psalms are really cool. And the whole idea of everything that I've done with Jesus Christ Superstar is, and then we made them look like glass. You and I were talking about this. It has I have a half a dozen different color combinations. There's dark red ones, there's green ones, there's these blue ones. It's really a great logo to do stuff with. You can't go wrong. It's symmetrical. So you really can't go wrong with anything that you do with it. So, but anyway.
Well, in our mind meld, something was coming to me as you were telling and just sharing this beautiful and touching story and revelation from the LP Jesus Christ Superstar, when Yvonne Elliman was singing "Everything's All Right." That's the song, because that's really what I was hearing in your story. Everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And it's the way God feels. That's what God tells us. You may not see the full picture, but as time goes by, that song communicates.
Yeah, and the other one for me, because I did, later on in later years, we did probably, I don't know, 15 years after I did this, we reconnected and I did an album for her, and it was really great. But for me, Everything's Gonna Be All Right is great. I love the music. I love the way it's presented. But for me, the song that really sets it all right for me. And maybe it's because of my, my experience with cancer, 20, back in 2000. I don't know how to love it.
Oh, yes,
And she
yes.
just, that became a hit single for her. They all did a great job. Nearly, they all were amazing in this album. When the album broke, right before it dropped, there was a private presentation, invitation only, full album live at St. Peter's Cathedral in New York. And Bonnie and I were able to go with Bill Levy. Bill Levy sat here, Bonnie and I sat there, and right on the other side of us, up in the balcony, looking down over all this, was Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Oh,
And
my.
it was an incredible experience because everything below us in the church was all media, press people, executives from record companies, not just Decca, and so it was quite an amazing event. It was the first live presentation ever of this album. Then later, like I said, Bob Stigwood, it's still touring to this day. It's kind of like Alice Cooper's School's Out.
Yeah.
Every time School's Out, every time Christmas comes around, they bring it back up. And I've had at least a half a dozen requests from different playhouse cities will have a actors playhouse and they put on shows, and a lot of big cities have that, a lot of little cities have it, and I've had probably a half a dozen or more requests to be able to use the logo that I did. And of course, I'm never going to go after anybody that would use any of this stuff. I'm just blessed to have this in my life, part of my story. It brings me closer to my God and my creator. And I don't know. I just feel that I have a connection. It's a spiritual connection, and he listens to my prayers and he answers my prayers. And I don't know whether it's just going to happen that way anyway. Things happen for a reason. I believe that. And I don't go around pounding my chest. And I try to be humble. God was very humble. That's why so
Yes.
many people loved him. That's why so many people follow him. He's a very humble person. And, I think that humble piece of it came across very, very strongly when I went to New York. I was the only one in the advertising classes in college that went off. I was like the little bird that was going off on their own direction and doing something really crazy, like going to New York. And that was, I grew up in San Jose, a small little farm town. Oakland was a bigger town, but not that much bigger. And to just pack up and go to New York without ever being there and having the confidence that you needed to go there and do something. And that's where I come back to that thing that I wrote recently about bringing me to my knees. There are many times, Joyce, in my career that I've been brought to my knees, but I've never laid flat. I've always been able to pick myself up and dust myself off and take that rejection and, make it acceptance. It's always what I've tried to do. I've never laid down, and I've had friends that, have something bad happen in their life and they just lay there. It's like a race. It's like running a race. And the people that are in the front pack, you're in there, and then all of a sudden you decide you want to sit down and rest. Well, the whole race doesn't stop with you. It keeps going. And that's what life is. Life keeps on going. And it's up to you. You can get up off your knees and you can dust yourself off and get back in the race, or you can just lay there and feel sorry for yourself. And the first person to really teach me that was my wife, Bonnie. She just didn't accept people that sought out pity and people that hid behind lies. She just never put up with it. And up until then, I'm an Italian boy, first son. My mom treated me like whatever I did was okay. And so when I met Bonnie, she wasn't having any of that. And it really, again, it brought me to my knees. And I could have stayed on my knees, or I could have laid down and just, you know, let life go on without me. But that's not, we're here for a reason. And part of the reason why I was here is because of this album, and am I sure of that? Yeah, I'm pretty positive
Yes.
that, there's no way I mean, I had a stack of National Geographics. I was going through I had all these magazines from the 20s and 30s. I was a real avid collector of that stuff because they had Maxfield Parrish ads in there for Jello, and they had J.C. Leyendecker ads in there for Arrow shirts. These illustrators that were amazing, and at one time I thought I was an illustrator until Bill Garland and Drew Struzan and Carl Ramsey and Joe Garnett and Ingrid Hinkey joined Pacific Pioneer, and then I realized, hey, these people are amazing. Stick to what I know best and let them really spread their wings. And they did. Every one of them did. And in doing that, having that attitude, I think is another big part of why I'm able to enjoy such a great career and still going. It's pretty amazing how all this comes full circle.
Aren't angels amazing? And
They
God
are.
speaks to us in a unique way.
Yeah.
That's the way one person's experience is different from another. This is that I love this conversation. Real quickly, in that presentation that you were mentioning, for the LP, was Ian Gillan part of that? Because I know he was Jesus on the
Yes.
On the LP.
Yes. And then I think Ted Neely became Jesus in the stage show.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Ian decided to because he had just gone with Deep Purple, and that was a decision for him. And he said he was more comfortable singing with Deep Purple than going on the stage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a lot of them went on to do more productions, but nothing as big as Jesus Christ Superstar. Even Yvonne had that big hit single, "I Don't Know How to Love Him," but her career just really paled. I think all of their careers pale uh, with what they had done here. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes greatness happens once and then it never happens again. Or it's further down the road and you have to stay determined and know that it's going to be there. It's like, what it's like? It's like being on a merry-go-round. Remember when you'd get on a merry-go-round and you'd sit on the outside animal, and when you went around, there was a thing that dispensed rings, metal rings.
Yeah.
And you reach out and grab the ring. And the whole idea was that there was a gold ring in there as well. So it was like Willy Wonka getting the gold wrapper, in the candy bar. I remember as a kid reaching for those rings, and then you got the metal ring and you threw it into a clown's mouth as it went around after you had pulled it off the thing. And the whole idea was if you got the gold ring, you got a Cupid doll and another free ride or whatever it was. But life is like that. Life is like reaching out for that ring, and it just depends on how far you're willing to reach out and how determined you are to keep going around until that brass ring comes. I was very lucky. My brass rings came out early on, and because I was in the right horse going around the merry-go-round, or I was at least on the merry-go-round and having the ability to reach out for that gold ring. And I've got it many times. I've been very blessed in my life to have done what I have. But the thing that's the biggest blessing of all, Joyce, the biggest blessing ever happened in my life, besides being born and having wonderful parents and family, was Bonnie. Last October, we celebrated 60 years of being together. And that's another part of the miracle and the connection that I have with my creator.